It was another busy evening at the elegant downtown restaurant, where Clara worked double shifts to pay her college tuition. The clinking of silverware and soft jazz filled the air as she moved gracefully from table to table, her blue uniform neatly pressed, her hair tied back into a simple bun. Her coworkers admired her calmness under pressure, unaware that behind her warm smile lay exhaustion and quiet dreams of traveling the world. That night, a man in his 60s sat alone by the window, looking at a menu with slight confusion, when he whispered something in French. Clara's face lit up. She hadn't spoken the language since her mother passed away, but she replied fluently, bringing a spark of life into the quiet man's eyes. The old gentleman smiled warmly as Clara conversed with him in French. Other waiters paused, surprised at her perfect pronunciation. For the first time that evening, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath, drawn to the melody of their soft exchange. The man told her stories about Paris, art, and youth, and Clara listened, feeling as though she were being transported to another world far away from the dull routine of bills and long hours. She served him with quiet, care-pouring tea, adjusting silverware, laughing at his soft jokes. From the corner of the room, a sharply dressed man in his early 50s watched with quiet interest, his expression thoughtful behind a tailored gray suit. The man observing them was Gabriel Langford, a billionaire entrepreneur known for his mysterious presence and rare public appearances. He had come for a quiet dinner, but Clara's kindness and effortless grace caught his attention more than any business deal ever could. He watched as she spoke gently to the old man, not for tips or recognition, but out of genuine humanity. It reminded him of a time when people still cared for one another without reason. The sincerity in her eyes stirred something buried deep within him, a longing for authenticity in a world of cold transactions. When Clara brought the check, the old Frenchman placed his trembling hand over hers and said, "Merci, mademoiselle. Vous avez un carré." She smiled humbly, unaware that the moment was being silently recorded in the memory of someone who could change her life forever. After paying his bill, the old man left quietly, leaving behind only an empty teacup and a lingering scent of nostalgia. Clara cleaned the table slowly, savoring the rare encounter. But as she turned, she noticed the man in the gray suit still seated a few tables away, watching her thoughtfully. She blushed, unsure whether she had done something wrong. Moments later, the billionaire stood, straightened his suit, and walked toward the exit without a word. On the table, under his untouched dessert plate, lay a small white envelope addressed simply, "To the young woman who speaks with heart." Clara found it as she cleared his table, puzzled by the elegant handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a folded letter and a sleek silver business card embossed with Gabriel Langford's name. The note inside was brief, but life-changing. "Your kindness reminded me what humanity means. There is a ticket waiting for you at the airport, Paris, first class. Use it to chase the world you dream of." Clara froze in disbelief. Her coworkers gathered around as she reread the letter, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The manager came over, concerned, and she showed him the card. He recognized the name instantly: Langford Industries, a global empire known for its luxury hotels and private airlines. Whispers spread through the restaurant like wildfire. Could it really be true? Clara's heart pounded as she clutched the note to her chest. For years, she had worked quietly, never expecting recognition, never asking for miracles. And yet here it was, an opportunity beyond imagination. It's born from a simple act of compassion. That night, she walked home through the quiet streets, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She remembered her mother's words, "Kindness finds its way back to those who give it." For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream again. The next morning, Clara stood at the airport, the letter still folded in her pocket, the sunrise spilling golden light over the runway. She hesitated at the gate, wondering if she deserved this. Then she heard the faint echo of the Frenchman's voice, "Vous avez un rare." With trembling courage, she stepped forward. When she boarded the private jet, a uniformed attendant greeted her by name, offering a smile and a glass of sparkling water. "Mr. Langford sends his regards," the attendant said softly. Clara looked around the luxurious cabin, soft leather seats, polished wood, sunlight streaming through wide windows. It felt unreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. But when she looked out and saw the clouds below, she knew it was real. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming gratitude that life could change in a heartbeat. In Paris. She was met by a small team from Langford Foundation, who explained that the billionaire often rewarded those whose compassion inspired him. He had arranged for Clara to study at the Sorbonne, all expenses paid as part of a humanitarian scholarship. They handed her an itinerary, hotel keys, and a note in his elegant handwriting. "The world needs more hearts like yours. Learn, grow, and never stop speaking the language of kindness." She read it again and again, unable to believe that her life story had shifted so profoundly because she chose to care for a stranger. Years later, Clara would return to the same restaurant, not as a waitress, but as a successful linguist working for international charities. The world had opened before her, but she never forgot that single moment of grace. Hanging in her office was the letter from Gabriel Langford, framed beside a photograph of the old Frenchman who first reminded her of who she was. Whenever people asked her secret, she would simply smile and say, "One act of kindness can open skies you never imagined existed." Months later, Clara found herself standing before a packed auditorium in Geneva, addressing a hall full of diplomats, scholars, and students. She spoke about language as a bridge between souls, how empathy could dissolve barriers that power and politics could never reach. Her words carried the same sincerity that once charmed an old man in a quiet restaurant. And as she spoke, the audience leaned in, drawn by something far more magnetic than prestige: authenticity. When the applause thundered through the hall, Clara's eyes welled up. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't just her victory. It was the continuation of that night's kindness, echoing across the years, across continents. After her speech, an assistant approached her with a familiar silver envelope. For a moment, her heart skipped. It was the same embossed stationery Gabriel Langford had once used. Inside was a handwritten note, still speaking with heart. "I see. Dinner at 8? A smile spread across her face as she realized he was there, somewhere in the crowd, quietly watching, as he always did. Later that evening, when she arrived at a private terrace overlooking the city lights, Gabriel was already seated, his smile modest but proud. Time had added lines to his face, yet his eyes still carried that same quiet warmth. Their dinner was filled with laughter and memories. Gabriel listened as Clara recounted her journey, her studies, her work with refugees, the children she'd taught French to in forgotten corners of the world. He told her how her story had inspired countless others to join his foundation, proving that compassion could ripple outward endlessly. "Do you see now," he said softly, "why I gave you that ticket?" Clara nodded, tears glistening. "Because kindness," she whispered, "is a flight that never lands." They shared a long silence, the kind that speaks volumes without words. When Gabriel passed away a year later, the news spread across the globe. Philanthropists, presidents, and artists gathered to honor his legacy, but among all the tributes, one stood out. A woman in a simple, black dress stood on stage and told the story of a waitress who once spoke French to a lonely man. The hall fell silent as Clara described how one small act of grace had rewritten her destiny. "He taught me," she said, her voice trembling, "that real wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you give away." The crowd rose to their feet, moved beyond measure. After the ceremony, Clara walked to the edge of the garden, where the evening breeze carried the scent of lilacs. She looked up at the stars, holding the old silver letter in her hand, the one that started it all. Somewhere she felt his presence, calm and proud, watching over her just as he had that first night. "Mercy," she whispered into the wind, "for seeing me when the world didn't." The breeze seemed to answer with a gentle hush, and in that moment, Clara understood, kindness never ends with one person. It travels onward, infinite and unseen, turning ordinary lives into extraordinary stories. Years passed, and Clara's life blossomed into something she had once only dreamed of while serving coffee behind that Right. Old restaurant counter? She became a global ambassador for education and language inclusion, traveling from country to country to help children find their voices through words. Yet, despite her growing fame, she remained humble, still writing letters by hand, just as Gabriel once did. Her favorite moments were not in grand halls or at ceremonies, but in the quiet corners of small classrooms where laughter echoed and hope was reborn. Every time she saw a child's eyes light up as they learned a new word, she felt Gabriel's spirit near, as if he was still guiding her, reminding her of the night everything changed. One morning, Clara stood at the balcony of her Paris apartment. Looking out at the sunrise spilling gold over the rooftops, she held a cup of coffee, the same way she used to back at the small cafe where it had all begun. The same scent, the same warmth, only this time her heart was filled with gratitude instead of longing. On her desk lay a framed note, the first letter Gabriel had ever left her, slightly faded but still glowing with meaning. Beneath it, an envelope with his handwriting read, "For when you need courage." She smiled softly, knowing she'd never opened it. It wasn't necessary anymore. She'd already found her courage not in money or fame, but in kindness, faith, and the language of the heart that had connected her to a stranger who changed her destiny forever. As the years passed, Clara's Café in Paris became a quiet sanctuary for travelers, dreamers, and locals alike. People said there was something magical about it, maybe the soft piano music that always played in the background, or the way sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warmth on everyone who entered. But those who knew her story understood that the real magic was Clara herself. She greeted each person with the same gentle smile she had once offered a lonely man at a table years ago. On one corner wall, framed in gold, hung a photograph of that old cafe where her journey began, and beneath it, a small plaque read, "Kindness is a language the heart never forgets." Gabriel visited sometimes, quietly, without the entourage or luxury that once followed him, and they would share coffee and laughter to souls who had found meaning in the simplest of gestures. One golden afternoon, as Clara stood by the window arranging flowers, she noticed a young waitress nervously approaching a table the same way she once had. The girl dropped a tray, her cheeks flushing red, and Clara hurried over to help her, smiling kindly. "It's all right," she said softly. "Everyone begins somewhere." The words felt familiar, like echoes from her past. Later that evening, as the cafe emptied, Clara found a note left behind on one of the tables. It read, "Your kindness reminds me of someone I once met. Thank you." She folded it gently and slipped it into her apron pocket, her heart swelling with quiet gratitude. In that moment, she realized that life had come full circle. The kindness she once gave to a stranger had now found its way back to her through another soul, proving that every act of compassion creates ripples that never truly fade. Months later, Clara stood at the airport once again, the same terminal where her destiny had changed years ago. But this time, she wasn't leaving in search of opportunity. She was returning home after completing her studies and establishing her own cafe chain named Mercy. Very word that once transformed. Her life now shone proudly on every storefront across Europe. As she stepped through the arrival gate, she spotted the billionaire Mr. Beaumont, now older and walking with a cane. He smiled warmly, his eyes filled with pride. "You kept your promise," he said softly. Clara hugged him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You taught me to dream." Cameras flashed, but she barely noticed, for this wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about gratitude, growth, and the power of a simple act of kindness that had rewritten her entire life story. The world around them blurred in golden light, as if the universe itself applauded the ending that kindness had written. As evening settled over the city, Clara and Mr. Beaumont sat in the rooftop garden of her flagship cafe. Overlooking the Eiffel Tower, the air was filled with the gentle aroma of coffee and blooming jasmine. Clara, now in her late 20s, wore a crisp white blouse and soft beige trousers. Her hair tied neatly back, the image of quiet confidence. Mr. Beaumont, dressed in a navy suit with a silk scarf, leaned back in his chair, smiling with contentment. "You see, Clara," he said, his voice steady yet warm, When you spoke French that day, you didn't just remind me of my late wife. You reminded me that grace and humility still exist in this world. Clara's eyes shimmered as she looked at him. And you showed me that kindness can change a life forever. The moment was simple, but in its simplicity lay something profound to souls. From entirely different worlds, bound by an act of compassion that turned into destiny. The city lights flickered below them like a promise that goodness always finds its way home. A soft breeze swept through the terrace, carrying with it the sound of laughter and live jazz from the street below. Clara poured tea for Mr. Beaumont, her movements graceful and calm. The same humility she once carried as a waitress still present in her demeanor. He watched her with quiet admiration, his eyes reflecting the golden glow of the setting sun. "You've built something remarkable," he said, his tone filled with genuine respect. "Not just a business, but a place where people feel seen." Clara smiled gently, replying, "That's because I know what it feels like to be invisible." For a moment, silence lingered, not heavy, but meaningful. The Eiffel Tower sparkled in the background. Casting light over their table, Mr. Beaumont reached across, placing his hand over hers. "You were never invisible, Clara. The world just needed time to catch up to your light." Her eyes softened, gratitude spilling into the quiet air. In that instant, both realized that wealth wasn't measured by fortune, but by the lives they had touched. Asterisk, asterisk.